Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Deck, and if you enjoy talking about movies in any way, shape or form, you're going to feel right at home here. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you my top 10 guilty pleasure movies / franchises, so let's dive into it. Kicking off my list at number 10 is Monsters vs. Aliens. Now this also kind of goes as an umbrella pick for all of the trash DreamWorks movies out there, although what I will say is there is actually another DreamWorks movie that's going to show up later in this list. But Monsters vs. Aliens in particular is a film that I grew up with as a kid. I just really enjoyed it back then. I thought it had a great cast. I thought it was really funny. It's got great action. It's got a great concept. And, as a kid, I just really enjoyed all of that. And as a visual spectacle, I think the movie has a lot riding on it. I think it's really fun, really enjoyable. And I even watched it again recently because I bought it on Blu-ray this year. And I actually checked it out fairly recently and I still enjoyed it. So for me, I feel like this and all the other DreamWorks movies that aren't really considered the best are still very much deserving of a guilty pleasure pick on this list. Coming in at number 9 is Just Go With It, and this is a film that I watched when I was younger. I watched it in the cinema and I just really enjoyed it back then, and it's a film I go back to quite often. I've watched this film a good few times and I even own it on Blu-ray now, and I still enjoy it to this day. It's an Adam Sandler comedy, and even though I've not seen many Adam Sandler comedies, I really enjoy this one. I think the cast is great. Jennifer Aniston's really good in the film. I also really like the two kid actors in the movie too. I think they're genuinely quite funny and actually do their jobs really well. And I think the film, it's a fun one to watch because it's basically about Adam Sandler just being caught in a web of lies, and watching his way fumble through that is enjoyable. And also Nicole Kidman's in this movie and absolutely kills it. She's brilliant in this. So it's genuinely a film that I can go back to a lot and still laugh at and still have a good time with, no matter the time. Coming in at number 8 is Need for Speed. And this is a film that when I first actually started watching movies, this is one of the first Blu-rays I ever bought, and I watched it and completely fell for it. This film is a Fast and Furious ripoff through and through, but that doesn't change anything about the fact that I still love it. I think this movie is just endlessly entertaining. The amazing supercars that you get in this film are just wonderful to watch on screen. The way they all just get wrecked and crashed, it's brilliant. And the cast is really fun. Aaron Paul's great in this movie. Michael Keaton's great in this movie. Dominic Cooper is awesome as the villain. There's just a really great story as well that I really enjoy, just going from one end of the country to the other. It's just a very great film, and overall I think this is actually one of the best video game movies out there, and I think that's because of how loosely this actually follows a video game. Obviously this is based on Need for Speed, but it's not based on any particular Need for Speed game. It's not based on any particular story from any of the Need for Speed games. It's just its own original thing, just with the Need for Speed name slapped on it, and that honestly makes this one of the best video game movies out there. So for me, I can't wait to go back and check this out again because I've not watched it in a few years, but I still love it. Coming in at number 7 is the Purge franchise, and I just love these films. And it's interesting because I'm not really a massive horror guy. Like, horror isn't really my genre, but these films, on concept alone, I was invested. And even though I don't love the first movie, just because I feel like it does kind of waste the concept, the second film onwards just completely nailed it, and I was just completely invested from that point forward, because the way the films take place on the streets is just fascinating because it's so dangerous, it's so enlightening, and it's just really fun to watch. It always has a great cast as well, and I like how each one kind of escalates. The first one was just like a home invasion movie, and then you have the second one which really took it to the streets. Then you had the third film which really upped the ante in terms of the ridiculousness and the wildness of the film, and then you have the fourth one, which is the prequel film, which is my personal favorite in the series, that just took it back to the second film's tone, made it a bit more grounded, a bit more violent, but also really interesting and a lot more fun to watch and a lot more interesting to see how people react. And I just really enjoy this franchise. I think it's endlessly entertaining. It never loses its entertainment value for me. And obviously we are meant to be getting one final Purge film, which was meant to come out this year, but has been pushed back, unfortunately. But I'm very excited to see how it all wraps up, because this is a great series for me and one that I really enjoy going back to all the time. Coming in at number 6, this is that other DreamWorks movie I mentioned, and that's Flushed Away. This film, I genuinely think is underrated. Like, among DreamWorks' ensemble of films, I think this is one of their most underrated things. And I think that's because a lot of people don't actually consider this to be a part of the DreamWorks canon. And I think a lot of people kind of see this film as like this odd offshoot, because obviously it's not really made by DreamWorks specifically. It's more made by Aardman, the guys behind Wallace and Gromit. But I think that doesn't take away from the fact that this film is amazing and so funny and incredible to watch. I mean, this is all made in claymation. It's all made in stop motion for the most part, and it's just incredible to look at. When you watch that and you take that into consideration, this movie is just a masterpiece of animation. And on top of that, this film has an incredible cast. It's hilarious. I literally watched this movie not 2 weeks ago, and I was still laughing my ass off consistently. And I don't know if that's just because this film is British and it has a British sense of humor, and therefore that's applicable to me, because I have a very British sense of humor. But it's just so funny. Like, it genuinely makes me laugh. Particularly the two characters of Whitey and Spike, sorry. They are really funny characters. You know, that's Bill Nighy and Andy Serkis, their two characters. Their duo and their dynamism is just endlessly entertaining to me, just watching them two go back and forth. But the entire movie is like that, and it also has this brilliant world of like this sewer version of London that they managed to recreate, and it's like London but just with its own little spin on it. I just think the movie is very creative, very underrated, and very, very funny. Coming in at number 5 is the Night at the Museum trilogy, and this is just nostalgia for me. I loved these films, and this is where my love of Ben Stiller really comes from. I grew up with these films, and I just absolutely love the character of Larry Daly, played by Ben Stiller. And again, this was kind of my introduction to Ben Stiller for the most part. I think I had seen the Madagascar films by this point, and I had also seen Along Came Polly by this point. But this was really the film that made me kind of fall in love with Ben Stiller, and I still love him today. And that's kind of where this comes from. And the Night at the Museum films, I just loved them as a kid because I was very interested in history as a kid, even though that kind of ebbed away as I got older. Particularly when I was younger, I was very interested in history, and this film really allowed me to sort of find out certain things about history and then go off on my own and Google stuff, you know, that was in these films, because I was very, very interested to see and find out more about these characters. And that was really, really fun for me and very, very exciting. Coming in at number 4 is Top Gun. And this is kind of like what I said in the last pick about that's where my love for Ben Stiller came from. This is kind of where my love for Tom Cruise comes from. I just absolutely love Top Gun. And fun fact, this is actually my mum's favorite movie of all time. And my mum isn't really someone who likes movies or watches movies, but this is a film that she loves and a film that she kind of gave to me. And I also love Top Gun. And again, this is where my love for Tom Cruise comes from. This is kind of like my first real major introduction to Tom Cruise. And I just absolutely adore this film. I think it's got such a great tone and such a great vibe to it. It's kind of like a chilled out movie in a lot of ways, but it's also got an incredibly strong emotional core. I also love the action sequences. Of course, this is a film about fighter pilots, and those action scenes with the fighter jets are still exciting even today. The music is just on another level in this film. Of course, this film does have Danger Zone, which is just one of the greatest songs maybe ever made. It's just so exciting and fits so well with this. And I just love all the characters in it, you know, all the performances are great. I just think it's one of those films that is so endlessly rewatchable, and I can't wait for Top Gun Maverick. We are finally getting a sequel coming now next year, which I'm very excited about. And you know, the trailer is just wonderful, and I cannot wait to see what they're going to do with it. So for me, Top Gun, it's kind of a special film for me. It's kind of a special connection between me and my mom. This is kind of the film that she loves, that I love, but it's also just a film that I really love and enjoy, and I cannot wait to watch it again on my new 4K that I bought recently. Coming in at number 3 is the Fast and Furious franchise, and was this even a surprise? I mean, Fast and Furious is a franchise that's so near and dear to my heart. I watched these films, you know, very early on in my movie watching career. I kind of watched them, you know, quite early on, and I just fell in love with them, you know, especially 5, 6, and 7 are some of my favorite films of all time. And for me, it's just this cast of characters that I've really, you know, grown with throughout this series and just continue to love and continue to see grow. And the action is unlike anything else in Hollywood. We have some of the most outrageous and audacious action scenes that we've ever seen. Each one is wilder than the last, and I love the cars in the film. As I said about Need for Speed, like seeing all those supercars were great, and this film is like that as well, but also has, you know, a whole range of different vehicles, you know, both stylistically and also creatively. They are all brilliant throughout this entire franchise. And also, each film has a great variety of locations. It's a real globe-trotting franchise. We get to go around the world and see these beautiful locations, and it's just a real journey for these characters. And I just love this franchise. I've become so dedicated to it. I've become so in love with it over the years. And, you know, we've got 3 more films to go. Fast and Furious 11 is supposedly the final film in the franchise, so we're now only got 3 films left, but this family is one that I'm incredibly close to and one that I cannot wait to see come to its conclusion, and I just hope it's a beautiful ending. It's very much how they gave Paul Walker such a beautiful send-off at the end of Furious 7. Coming in at number 2 is the Cars Trilogy, and this is such a special pick, and this is definitely the most nostalgic pick on this list. Cars, the original, is the film that I grew up with. Like, that was my childhood film. You know, everyone has that film as a kid they watched, and that was like their film. Like, that was the film they watched as a kid, and that was like the only thing they watched. That was me with Cars. Like, that was the film I grew up with. And, you know, kind of funny, you know, even though I love movies now, I didn't as a kid. I was actually scared of the cinema as a kid. I didn't like it. And but I begged my parents to take me to go and see Cars, and they were like, well, why do you want to go see Cars? Like, why do you want to go to the cinema? You hate it. Which was true, I did. But I really wanted to go see this movie, and as soon as I did, they finally took me, and I just fell in love with it. Like, that was my film as a kid, you know, that was my movie. And the entire trilogy, I've just felt incredibly personally connected to. I understand why people hate Cars 2. I understand that a lot of people see it as this sort of direct-to-DVD sequel that really shouldn't have gone to cinemas, but for some reason it did. But for me, just because it's more of the world and more of those characters, I still love it and I still appreciate what it is. And then Cars 3, I genuinely think is really underrated. I think that a lot of people don't really give the film the credit it deserves, because I actually think in a lot of ways the film is better than the first. While I still have more love for the first one and more connection to the first one, I think Cars 3, bringing it back to the racing, you know, really bringing it back to that original core theme really helped it. And also it told a really great story, you know, with Lightning as the main character again. And it was the most beautiful ending I could have asked for. Like, that was the exact perfect kind of ending I wanted for Cars 3. I didn't know how they were going to wrap up the story, but I was really impressed with what they did. I thought it was fantastic. And I think that even though Pixar, you know, they have hit and misses here and there, I think they are very good with their endings. Even Toy Story 4, a film I don't like, the actual ending of that film and the ending of that trilogy or of that series, I actually think is really great. And I say the same for Cars 3. I think it's such a beautiful ending to that series. So for me, the Cars series, it's so personal to me. It's such a franchise that's so close to my heart. You know, it is that film that I loved as a kid and I will continue to love forever. I don't know if we'll ever get a Cars 4, but if we do, I am so excited to see it. But for me, this is just a perfect trilogy that I love. Even though Cars 2 is definitely a bit of an outlier, I still enjoy it for what it is. And my number one absolutely has to go to the Transformers series. I've spoken about this so many times before. I've done a ranking video of these. The Transformers films are my favorite films of all time. And you know, it's kind of interesting to put them as my number one guilty pleasure, because in a way, I'm not really guilty for loving them, but I kind of have to be in a way because they're so bad. But I can't help myself. Kind of like Cars, I did kind of grow up with these films. You know, after Cars, my kind of next love was Transformers. That was kind of like that transition. And that was when I started to watch these Transformers films, watch Transformers TV shows, collect all the toys. I was just so into Transformers, and that all came from the movies. You know, the first one I watched on DVD, absolutely loved it, and then I got the second one about a month later for Christmas and I absolutely loved it, and then from that point on I watched them in the cinema. That then led to Dark of the Moon, which is my favourite in the series, and also Dark of the Moon is my favourite film of all time. Age of Extinction, which I was disappointed with initially as a kid, but I've started to grow to like it a bit more. And then The Last Knight, I absolutely love. I think The Last Knight is so great. And then Bumblebee, which was just a beautiful new entry into the series that was kind of different but kind of similar, but I still love it because of what it is and what it represents. The Transformers series is just so special to me, and I feel like that, you know, I'm one of the biggest stans of it. You know, I know that the Transformers movies have their fans across the globe. I mean, the third and fourth film both made $1 billion worldwide. I know these films are popular, but for me, like, I don't see many people online actually talk about how much they genuinely love and adore these films in the same way that I do. And I just think that these films have such a special place in my heart. You know, the action, yes, it's over the top. Yes, it's silly. Yes, sometimes it's hard to see exactly what's going on. But it's such a visual spectacle. And I think the one thing that nobody can deny about the Transformers films is how fantastic the CGI is, particularly on the transformations, you know, in these big battle sequences. It's flawless. Like, it's absolutely flawless. And the humor throughout the series, particularly the first three, I know a lot of people hate the humor. I genuinely find it quite funny, and I don't know if that's just me, but I really actually think the humor works. I think it's really entertaining, and I think the characters are great. The Autobot cast is always fantastic all the way through. Even though I like the Autobot cast quite a bit more in the first three films than the fourth and fifth film, I still really love the overall Autobot cast. The villains are always great. I think each Transformers movie has a pretty solid villain. Even though the Fallen in the second film's not the best, and I think that maybe Quintessa in The Last Knight, again, maybe not the strongest villain, but we do have Lockdown in Age of Extinction, who's incredible. Sentinel Prime in Dark of the Moon is a great villain, and of course Megatron in the first film, where he was the main villain of that one. All great choices as the villains, and I think that it's just an incredible franchise that's continued to grow, even though they are very messy, they're quite bad in a lot of ways. I just love them, and I've said this before, but I really hope that Michael Bay would come back to do one more film. I really want to see him do Transformers 6. Given the fact that Transformers The Last Knight ended on such a big cliffhanger, I would love to see Michael Bay come back and do one more Transformers film to really close out his kind of saga and bring back all the cast members throughout. Like, I'd love to see Shia come back. I'd love to see Megan Fox come back. Just bring everyone back for this final film and then end it. Then end the series, and then we can carry on and do other Transformers movies elsewhere. But for me, this series is so special. I love it. And, you know, I went a long time in my life kind of pretending that even though I've always said I like the films, I've never really confessed to my true love for them before, but I can't help it. I just love these films. I adore them. I always will. And that's why they're my number one guilty pleasure, and also my favourite films of all time. So there you have it, guys. There's my list of my top 10 guilty pleasure movies / franchises. If you have your own list, make sure you drop it in the comments down below. Very interested to see what your favourites are. And what you think of my list, make sure you let me know all your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. And as always, if you want to see more movie videos like this and movie content like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads from me. And I hope to see you guys again next time.